So it looks like that first video got more than 2 views. Oh well, time to make another one. Stupid people. We gotta hate them. Whether it's a good friend who annoys you, or a popular person with lots of power. So what if we made one of those people the villain of a movie? Specifically, a murder mystery, where the villain is the dumbest man on the planet, but gets away with it because his plans are too idiotic to be true. I mean, I don't know, that sounds like an interesting movie. But I guess not for everybody. The Glass Onion came out a few months ago, and it made the rounds across the internet, and people seem to be somewhat divided on it. Some people like the movie for its ability to subvert murder mystery tropes and create a unique story with a good presentation, while others just seem to hate Rian Johnson. Okay, I'ma chill. I know that's not the only reason people hate this movie. Some people have perfectly valid, reasonable complaints about the villain, like saying that detective movies are about being smart, so it's lazy writing. However, this does actually make an interesting question. Can we have stupid characters in movies? Because in the real world, people make stupid mistakes all the time. We can't predict, we can't explain everything all the time. I have walked in my house for years now, but I will stub my toe again. If Vladimir Putin trips while going down some stairs and breaks his neck, I guarantee that Ukraine won't say, well, that's just bad writing. But in stories, characters are not allowed to make mistakes. Characters have to act almost perfectly. And if they ever do make a mistake, you have to explain with excruciating detail what was going on through that character's psyche. See, if a character that has been pretty smart suddenly slips up, it creates an inconsistency that disrupts the audience's investment in the story. Suddenly, people start questioning, why did the author make that character make that mistake? Could it be to make the plot move along? And that is lazy writing. So how can a writer properly explain that a character is prone to making mistakes? Well, easy. Just make them completely oblivious. Stupid people make mistakes all the time, so if you make a character dumb, you can make them do whatever you want. But there's a caveat. If a character is too stupid, then how can we explain them being able to do anything? Characters need some amount of brain cells to perform their roles in the story, but since intelligence isn't something you can quantify definitively, it can end up coming across as arbitrary again. Saying that a character is dumb is not an excuse for inconsistent writing, so in order to keep things steady, we write stupidity as a sort of blind spot that a character can have. Walter White is one of the smartest fictional characters ever. This man ran circles around 2 drug cartels and eliminated both of them in less than a year, but his weakness is his vanity. He is so full of himself that after killing all of his enemies, he leaves damning evidence on his toilet as a little trophy. This is so dangerous and stupid, but also perfectly in character, because we see throughout the show that Walter sees himself as superior to everyone. He is the one who knocks the danger, not the one in danger. He is simply untouchable. And this delusion is what creates a blind spot for people to undo his empire. Walter is being an idiot in this scene, but he is also being consistent. But vanity is not the only way for characters to be stupid. Sometimes a character may not have good critical thinking skills. Bowser in the Mario games is not really a very intelligent villain, but he is always able to create a plan that allows him to capture the princess and beat Mario at the beginning of every game. This is because he had time to prepare, because even if he isn't good at quick thinking, it makes sense that given enough time, he would find a way to get what he wants. But this is also why when Mario fights him at the end, he is always able to win. Since now that the plan has been completed, Bowser only has his lack of improvisational skills and a lot of pent-up frustrations. And this leads me to the most common way a stupid character is written. Make the villain extremely impulsive. Sometimes making a good decision doesn't really require you to use all your brain power. Sometimes all you need is common sense in order to figure out the right choice. But if a person is emotionally compromised, they might lose that common sense and make bad decisions. And I think Miles Bron is one of the best examples of writing a stupid character in movies. The meta-narrative of the movie is that Miles appears to be smart and sophisticated, but in reality he's a simpleton who gets credit he doesn't deserve, and his lack of critical thinking makes him some enemies that in trying to dispose of, creates loose ends that lead to his defeat. This is the big picture that the movie is trying to present, and I think it shows it pretty well. Every mistake he makes is either from vanity, short-sightedness, or impulsiveness, and these traits are consistent throughout the story, and I think aspiring writers should look at this as an example of how to write a dumb character. But how does The Glass Onion present these traits I listed before in Miles Bron? Well, let's look at the character chronologically. In the beginning, we see that Miles is very wealthy, and with his group of friends, he creates Black Mesa. We see that Miles had very little actual involvement in making the company, and is more responsible for providing the resources for his friends to use to run the business. This shows us that Miles is opportunistic and has good networking skills. The moment Andy came up with the business on the napkin, he took it to the stars. Then after his falling out with Andy and the reveal that she had the napkin which she would use to take him down, like a rational person, he decides to go down to her house and murder her. This is Miles being impulsive. There are probably different ways that he could have handled the situation, but in his mind, the quickest and easiest solution was to kill Andy in cold blood and take the napkin. To him, the concern that he might be leaving loose ends doesn't cross him because he thinks that as long as no one can directly prove that he is guilty, that he will be fine. This is not actually that unrealistic. A lot of real-world criminals are actually really stupid, and knowing Andy's relationship with Miles, this is probably his first murder. His MO seems to be to kill someone, then try to misdirect people into not believing that he is the culprit. He creates these really weird lies that are not very useful and confuse others into thinking that the murder was much more complicated than it appears. But in reality, once you see right through it, the truth becomes very clear. That is why Rian Johnson chose to make Miles good at sleight of hand, because his skill lies in his concept of misdirection. But wait, isn't he actually really smart since the murder actually worked? I mean, people really thought it was a suicide, but that's not true. Helen knew it wasn't a suicide and decided to investigate him. People like to see Andy having a twin sister as a coincidence, but what it really is an unlikely blind spot for Miles' plan. Because if he was actually smarter, he would have made sure to check Andy didn't have a twin sister that could easily realize that Andy was murdered by someone close. This is Miles' main mistake. He just doesn't have the critical thinking skills for it. But even without that, he's being defeated by the other stupid character trait, Vanity. Again, Miles thinks that this murder is done and dealt with. He's the CEO of this massive company. He's a billionaire and literally owns the Mona Lisa. The man is about to invent electricity too. He just pulled off a scheme to eliminate his enemies and so believes that there is no way it can be tied back to him. This would give anybody an ego. So now Miles thinks that he is invincible. The crime that he committed is now small potatoes to him, so it makes sense that he would never suspect that Helen and Blanc would be investigating him when they arrive on the island. To Miles, he just thinks that this murder attempt failed and that Andy is probably trying to get back at him. But he never suspects that she got Blanc to investigate him. After all, what is there to investigate? A murder that didn't happen? Miles probably thinks that Andy is just trying to get back the napkin, so he has to dispose of her discreetly. The smart move would be probably to tell Andy to leave and have his murder mystery party with Blanc and his friends. However, as we all know, Miles thinks himself very capable, and I mean, he is about to show everyone how awesome he is with his onion house until he just invented the second electricity. So he believes that he can just take care of it all on his own. Now, okay, look, I'll admit, this is kind of a stretch. I mean, yeah, this is by far the stupidest thing Miles does in the movie, and I get why some people don't like this. Murder mysteries usually rely on a very smart villain to fight a really smart detective to make a very interesting conflict. So when this movie makes the villain really stupid, some people are kind of disappointed. But that's kind of the main theme of the movie. Miles here has the choice to be smart and end the whole good guy plan. But instead, he chooses to believe that he can fix every problem and not get caught, because all of his yes men and colleagues have given him this false impression of who he really is, and this eventually leads to his defeat. Okay, but now let's get to the best scene in the movie. The disruption speech. This scene encapsulates everything this movie is trying to say. Miles talks about how cool he is for breaking the status quo and inventing creativity, and how his friends are like, that'll never happen, and then he's all cool, and they'll be like, whoa, and then they're all like, in your face, and then Helen's all like, you goddamn idiot! Disruption theory is about breaking barriers and making history by going against the grain, finding something that everyone is doing wrong and daring to tell them their mistake. But for Miles, he simply believes that doing things everyone tells you not to do is clever and quirky. This is even portrayed by Kate Hudson's character when she says that her speaking without a filter allows her intelligence to shine. Then it's immediately countered by Blanc telling her that speaking without thinking isn't the same as speaking the truth. This is really good writing. When Miles saw Andy creating the napkin, he decided to give her the resources to turn it into the profitable company that it became because he saw it as a disruption. But when he heard the idea of a revolutionary super fuel that everyone told him was dangerous, he decided to fund it because not listening to others was disruption, according to him. Clear as a fuel was never going to work. It was too volatile. It turned houses into the Hindenburg because of its chemical nature. Yet he figured that as long as he could use it carefully, he could prove that it was safe, and that's why he carelessly fueled the glass onion with clear. His overconfidence leads to carelessness, which leads to him making a stupid mistake that seems minor at first, but blows up into something very big in the end. In fact, everything that leads to the end is caused by his vainglory. He carelessly gives Blanc a sample of clear, then he never asks for it back, not realizing that it could be used against him later. He installs a failsafe override for the Mona Lisa enclosure and then tells all of his friends about it because he doesn't see them as a threat. Hell, he invites them to a murder mystery party when they all have a reason to kill him. This is all pretty goofy, but I think it helps that the movie has a pretty silly tone all throughout, so I can forgive the weirdness. I mean, Miles is Scrooge McDuck levels of rich, so I can believe he would have a superhuman ego. Plus, his influence and power allows him to not be completely useless against Blanc and Helen, because when you write a character to be stupid, it works if you give them some sort of strength to work with. As I said before, one of Miles' strengths is that he's very opportunistic. After Blanc tells Miles that his life could be in danger and Miles finds out that Andy is Helen, he freaks out and doesn't let it show, since he is good at misdirection. His impulsiveness leads him to prioritize killing Helen since he doesn't know what she might be trying to do. He then immediately steals Blanc's idea and commits what is a pretty clever murder to disorient people and then go kill Helen. Alright, Miles' talent, go! Alright, with the misdirection power, he steals Duke's gun and sneaks him the drink spiked with pineapple. Then he uses his powers of confusion in order to make everyone think that someone is trying to kill him and then runs away in a fox panic with the gun. Then, since they are at his home, he has the home field advantage, so he turns off all the lights and makes his way around the house. He knows the layout of Best's and looks for Andy. Then once she finds her with Blanc, he shoots her in the chest and runs away before he can be seen through the window. Some have said that he could have shot Blanc as well, but part of his plan is getting Blanc to think that Miles couldn't be the murderer. Otherwise, when the authorities arrive, they would find like 6 people and like 3 dead bodies. I think the others would find out pretty quick who did it. But all in all, this is a pretty good plan. Until you realize that there's nowhere to go later. This ex-Kira that Miles tries to blame the murder on can't possibly exist since Miles is always the one that is most likely to have committed the murder. Because why would the murderer that just tried to kill Miles then go kill Andy? Yeah, sure, you can spin a crazy story and motivation to explain how it all might be possible, peel away at the layers and try to explain it why it all makes sense, but in the end, the truth is actually right there in plain sight. Who else but Miles is more likely to be the murderer? And just like when he killed Andy, once you suspect Miles, the answer becomes clear. Miles is the baddie. And of course he would think that it would all work out. He's the great Miles Bron, the super genius who invented the Alpha Corporation. Why shouldn't he think every decision he makes is the right one? But of course, he didn't count on Blanc seeing through his deception and Helen surviving and then getting the napkin. Now we get to the denouement of the character. Now it's out in the open that he killed Andy and Duke. Everyone knows that he's the worst, and Helen here has decisive evidence that will get him super arrested. But Miles has one more ace up his sleeve. And by ace, I mean his lighter. This is probably the smartest thing Miles does in the entire movie. He asks Helen how she can prove that it's the real napkin, knowing that it's because of the small watermark on the bottom. This way she will get closer to him to show it, and then BAM! Surprise attack. Evidence is gone, reduced to atoms, and using his power of influence, he has persuaded everyone to deny the existence of the napkin and his involvement in the death of Duke. In a sense, this isn't a defeat for Helen, but for Blanc, since now he can't do anything else that would go beyond his jurisdiction. Helen is left on her own, with nothing but her courage and a reminder of why her sister walked away in the first place. Devastating. But it seems there is nothing else she can do, until she starts to put the pieces together. All of Miles' mistakes, his transgression, and misplaced assumptions have left one last blind spot in his supposedly impenetrable defense. One final path to victory, so insane that it just might work. She starts destroying things, shattering the sculptures and smashing the art, just like how she did at the very beginning of the movie. Miles doesn't pay mind to this, of course. I mean, what would this really do? I mean, even the others stand by her. I mean, it's not like anything they're destroying really matters, right? Then she starts burning the place. Starting to get dangerous. Miles and the others start to feel concerned for what is happening. She might burn down the house. So now he realizes that he has to stop her and he can't just let her keep going, but it's too late. The small piece of clear Miles gave Blanc gave to her, along with the courage to do what needs to be done to avenge her sister, destroy the reputation of Clear, and defeat Miles Bron. His poorly designed house and volatile solid fuel is now going to literally blow up in his face. But it's still not enough. She needs Clear to destroy something big, something priceless, something irreplaceable, something thought to be immortal that will destroy the reputation of Miles Bron for all of history. Something Miles gave her on a silver platter. Something Miles could have prevented if he wasn't such a stupid idiot. I hear people say that Helen is the true villain of the movie because she destroyed the Mona Lisa. But like, are you people crazy? Helen saved the potential millions of